I mean, 100%. There is a lot of pressure this year for this team to take the next step. And I think the next step doesn't necessarily mean winning a championship. Like going 7 in the second round, right? Is really if they don't get past the first round, it's a failure for the season. I'll just say that right now. Assuming the team is mostly healthy, right? That's underperforming. If they're a play-in team, that's underperforming. This team should be a home court advantage team, that is a clear-cut second round playoff team that potentially could make the Eastern Conference Finals. Like that's the expectations we are holding this Magic team to. At least I am holding this Magic team to. There might be some people that have it even higher.
He is a partner at Orlando Magic HQ, and he hosts the show The Close Up. We welcome back Stephen Cameron onto Hoopsology. Welcome back.
Justin, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk some more Orlando Magic basketball with you.
Appreciate you coming back. We're in the middle of our season preview. We like to get an early jump on previewing all the teams in the NBA. So it's a pleasure just to have your analysis and just shed some light on just the journey that the Orlando Magic is going on. So let's not waste any time. Last year, the record was 41-41, seventh in the East, lost in the first round to the Boston Celtics. But since 2020, they have increased their win total for 4 straight seasons. So let's not only reflect on last season, but since 2020, just the state of this franchise before we get into projecting this upcoming season. From 2020 to the last season, were you satisfied in terms of kind of the trajectory of this team? I realized they had a lot of injuries, but in terms of their path and them having a franchise player with Paulo, were you pretty satisfied overall in terms of the result, or do you think there's some things that left you kind of, I don't know, some negative feelings just due to the
Sure.
result of last season? What do you think?
No, I mean, obviously, when you look at last year specifically, like you can't look at the season and just not have the word injuries like right up there with everything. But in context of them still being a top 3 defense the entire season and making it to the first round and having a fairly competitive 5-out series with the Boston Celtics, that feels good, but to back to your main point, your main question of over the last handful of years, kind of how am I feeling? Like, I think when you look at the whole stretch of the last, 4 or 5 years, it's just a sign of building something foundational, right? The defense has been a top 10 defense for the last handful of years, the last couple of years being a top 5 defense. They're starting to find some foundational pieces, like you mentioned earlier, Paolo Banchero, franchise player, franchise cornerstone. They find 2 other pretty much franchise guys as well on their own, and Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, core guys, and continuing to see them all progress in their own way, despite some of the injuries. Jalen Suggs has kind of an injury riddled career so far. Um, but you see a guy like Jalen Suggs make all defensive team his healthy year 2 years ago. You see a guy like Paulo Banchero make all star his sophomore year. And was probably on his way to an all NBA season had he not been out so many games this year with another all-star under his belt. You have Franz Wagner, who potentially could have made all-star again for his first time this past year. Again, if he didn't have an oblique injury. And you see a team that just continues to buy into what the head coach, Coach Jamahl Mosley, who is this is his first time as a head coach with the Orlando Magic. He was an assistant coach, a developmental coach with the Dallas Mavericks before joining the Magic as a head coach. And you continue to just see the team and the organization buy into what Coach Jamahl Mosley is trying to do. And it's definitely been proven on the defensive side, right? The last handful of years, I mean, honestly, since 2012, the Magic have been one of the worst offensive teams in the entire league. Granted, a couple different GMs in there, a couple different head coaches, but if you just look at just this section, there's definitely some room to grow there, and a lot of that has just been like roster construction and even health issues to an extent. There haven't been too many like seasons in the last few years where you're like, wow, this team feels really healthy. There's been like 1 or 2 of those. Other than that, it's been rebuilding or like still early stage of rebuilding despite maybe drafting Franz and Paulo, or just not quite ready to make a strong enough move to really fix some of the roster changes, or they tried to make the moves and they just didn't pan out for one reason or another. Like last year, I do still think that the thought process of signing Contavious Caldwell Pope was a good thought process, a good two-way defender that is a, career 39-40% three-point shooter on a lower volume, but good in theory. That should help the three-point in the offense. Didn't really translate that way. But I think in general, again, just to recap, when you're looking at the last handful of years to now, you're seeing a team that is building a really solid defensive identity. Um, Teams around the league look at the Magic as a team that plays physical, that plays hard, specifically on the defensive end. They're not get teams won't get easy baskets versus the Magic, and that identity has stayed consistent and only gotten better as the past couple of years have gone on. And then you're seeing, development in their young stars and Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. So I think that is the positive side. I think the negative thought side, of the part where it's like I still have questions, are some of the role players, right? You have guys that are young, going into their second and third year, like Tristan Da Silva and Anthony Black. Anthony Black was the sixth pick 2, 3 years ago. He's going into his third year now, and so it's like, what are these guys going to turn into, particularly on the offensive side? A guy like Anthony Black kind of showed pretty quickly that he can hang in the NBA at a pretty high level on the defensive end, but offensively, there's still a lot of questions on what is he going to be? Is he going to be like a point guard player, or is he going to be more of like a a big wing or a big guard that can, you know, defend multiple positions and be more of a secondary ball handler? If that's the case, he's still got to prove that he can be more effective off the ball on the offensive side. He's got to get more efficient with his finishing at the rim. So there's questions around role players like guys like Anthony Black, guys like Tristan Da Silva that are a little bit more on the younger side. There's questions around like Wendell Carter Jr., who's a very good center, but can he level up his game and stay healthy enough to be, a starting center for the Orlando Magic at a higher competitive level where their expectations are higher? So those are kind of the questions we still have. And obviously, like the biggest one, will their offense ever get to where it needs to be? Particularly in the three-point shooting. They've been like, I think they were at 29th or 30th in the league last year in three-point shooting, and it was just like career and historically awful. And that has to be addressed and has to be corrected. And, they think they have started to do that with bringing in one of the best three-point shooters in the league, Desmond Bane, this offseason. Tyus Jones, 40% three-point shooter, is going to be a point guard off the bench for the Magic. So they're getting there, but there's still questions, and we kind of need to see some of that stuff play out a little bit. But in theory, they're trying to fix those issues.
So, with the issues that you mentioned, but their improvement recently, when the first half of the season starts, so basically from October, I would say, I wouldn't even say the All Star break, maybe Christmas. What are you looking for if this team struggles? Is that going to be a concern, or do you think they can turn it around? Like if they're underperforming when we get to Christmas, I realize that there's still the All Star break in the second half of the season, but if that does happen, and considering I think the NBA is a lot more parity, I think it's pretty wide open despite teams having a lot of superstars. I think if teams improved, teams can make some noise compared to before where there's a lot of different super teams. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
clarity these days. So I guess my question to you, in the early part of the season for the Magic, if they do struggle, will you be concerned, or do you think that'll be more of a learning process for them to turn around and kind of make a push towards the second half?
I think it really depends on how they're struggling, right? If they're struggling with the offense, I'm gonna probably still give them a little bit of time to figure things out. They've replaced, I'm gonna say these names and no one's gonna blink an eye, but they've replaced Gary Harris, Cole Anthony, um, Corey Joseph with Desmond Bain, Tyus Jones, um, Chase Richardson, a rookie. And those guys are, we all have seen this in the NBA when new people come in. It's not always day one that things feel and fit just right, and it can take some time. Um, and again, you're looking at a starting unit that doesn't really have a true point guard still, right? It's got a lot of ball handlers and a lot of capable ball handlers. Bane is more of a combo guard, but can very well handle the ball and run an offense. He averaged like 5 assists per game last year. I think the last 2 years. Jalen Suggs, again, more of like a combo guard, but can be a lead ball handler to an extent. He's got his limitations there. Then obviously the offense is going to eventually get to Franz and Paulo, and they're both 4, 5, 6 assists per game type of jumbo forwards. So I'm gonna start to question. I'm first gonna look at that and see is it an offensive issue? Um, if it is, I might have a little bit more patience. Now, if it's a defensive issue, I'm gonna have flags raised big time and have concerns because if it's defense, that's been this Magic's team's bread and butter for a very, very long time. Um, and if they're struggling there, that's a major concern. And then I'm also going to look at the bench because there's some questions on the bench, right? You have some pretty clear-cut roles with um, Tyus Jones as the point guard there, Anthony Black playing guard next to him. And then you have, Mo Wagner when he gets healthy, he'll be the starting five playing next to Jonathan Isaac. So then it's like, well, kind of like who is filling in for that small forward spot? Is it Tristan Da Silva? Has Jet Howard kind of taken a step filling in there? What are they kind of doing with that position? Because I do think there's more questions about the second unit than there is the starting unit. We don't really know how Anthony Black is going to fit in this offensive role next to Tyus Jones. We hope that it helps him take that next level, but that's just kind of an unknown. We don't know if how he's going to improve on his weaknesses, and with his driving and finishing at the rim and his shooting struggles outside of the corner three. Like if that stuff will increase and improve, we Tristan Da Silva, I think, had a pretty good year for a rookie, but he is going to be expected to level up his game. And, he had a pretty awesome FIBA summer playing for Team Germany. But, at the same point, that needs to translate to the Magic and his role with them. So I'm going to be looking pretty aggressively at the second unit and how the offense is clicking just as a team whole. I'm not gonna be too worried because again, when you're looking at this roster, there is no player, I believe, over the age of like 28, 29.
Oh,
I believe Desmond, I believe Jonathan Isaac. I gotta go look at their ages again. But most of these guys, yeah, Jonathan Isaac's 28, Desmond Bane's 27, Tyus Jones, he's the oldest guy, he's 29, right? So it's still a very young roster. When you're looking at guys like Franz Wagner, 24, Jalen Suggs, 24, Paulo's 23, Anthony Black's 22. It's still a pretty young team. So there's got to be a little bit of give there. But honestly, we're holding this Magic team to a really high standard and high expectations. I mean, we'll definitely be disappointed if this team is struggling come December, right? We want to see this team coming in clicking, but I'm not going to raise the red flag unless it's like really specific situations as to why they're struggling and just kind of recognize that it could take a little bit of an adjustment with these newer players. And they have a new offensive coordinator and Joe Prunty who joined the Magic coaching staff. He's highly regarded. He's been in a lot of high level systems. A lot of people might remember him from filling in for the Milwaukee Bucks. That one year before they hired Doc Rivers. So he should help revolutionize the offense, but those are things that I'm going to be looking at.
so I want to read you something from NBA.com. They did a preview on the Atlanta Magic, and they had a quote from David Aldridge. I want to get your thoughts on this because I thought it was pretty. I think it put a lot of pressure on the Magic to win this season. I want to see if
Sweet.
you agree with this. So he said, with the second apron looming, the Magic has to win now. Bane should be a hand in glove fit for an offense that desperately needs his career 41% 3-point shooting. So if this team underperforms when this upcoming season concludes, where do you think the consequences are? Because in my mind, maybe this is a false comparison, but I'm thinking that Detroit Pistons, right, really struggle, a lot of young players, and then all of a sudden really showed a leap in terms of their progression. They made a coaching change, other things happened, but just I think they were looming in terms of the stars, and I think the Magic. I kind of see that trajectory. I'm
Yeah.
waiting to see. Okay, you know, I'm a huge Bulls fan. I think they're just going to be irrelevant forever. And I think there's a lot of teams that
Sorry about
kind of
that.
no, yeah, it's a struggle, and that's a podcast for another day. But there seems to be a lot of teams kind of in that bottom tier. But I think around like I would say 10-1, it's really up for grabs. And I'm just in my mind, if the Magic underperform, do you think there'll be patience, or do you think there'll be a rush to make swift changes to dramatically improve just due to Paolo Banchero?
I mean, 100%. There is a lot of pressure this year for this team to take the next step. And I think the next step doesn't necessarily mean winning a championship, but like going 7 in the second round, right? Um, is really if they don't get past the first round, it's a failure for the season. I'll just say that right now. Assuming the team is mostly healthy, right? That's underperforming. If they're a play-in team, that's underperforming. This team should be a home court advantage team. That is a clear-cut second round playoff team that potentially could make the Eastern Conference Finals. Like that's the expectations we are holding this Magic team to. At least I am holding this Magic team to. There might be some people that have it even higher. Um, Excuse me, but that's where I am holding this Magic team to, and if they underperform and I think those expectations sorry, before I go into that, I think those expectations are valid. They made a huge move this offseason in acquiring Desmond Bane. They traded away some rotation players and a lot of picks, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap for Desmond Bane, and that got questioned whether the value whether you agree with the value or not, that when you trade that many picks for a player, that puts expectations on a team because that says they're trying to take the next step, and they've made it very clear they are trying to take the next step and they want to go win. They believe in this roster can go win right now. And I agree. I agree in all of that. We've seen Paulo. I mean, every single year Paulo has increased his scoring. He averaged sorry, my computer's freezing up on me for a second, but he averaged 25 points per game last year and increased it every year from his rookie as his rookie year. So, if they underperform, that was your question. If they underperform, what
Yeah.
does that mean for this roster? That means that there's probably going to be changes potentially at the head coaching position, right? We know this league is short with coaches, right? If
Yeah.
if they start to underperform, they're the first one to go because they're going to, you know, want to try and keep the players happy to an extent. I believe we could see some sweeping changes to the second unit, and have them go be aggressive in shoring up that aspect. If the second unit is part of the reason why they're struggling, so it could come with some consequences. Yeah, it could come with some consequences if they underperform. Granted, this front office seems to have a lot of patience with their coaching staff and with these players, and the way they have lined up the contracts is you have Jalen Suggs, you have Paolo Banchero, and you have Franz Wagner and Desmond Bane all for the next 4 years kind of lined up. So they do have a bit of a runway there, but at the same point, if they don't get out of the first round this year, that's going to come with some changes for sure.
So, what do you make of the Magic in terms of the rest of the Eastern Conference? A lot of change, a lot of volatility, a lot of players that are out with serious injury throughout the East. Where do you kind of see them in terms of the rest of the conference? You think? Because I think it's very volatile in terms of like even the top teams, like traditionally have been the Celtics, but with Tatum's injury, like that's unpredictable. Like even the Knicks, like I don't think they've been like super phenomenal in the regular season. I'm just curious, where do you think they'll rank in terms of the East and even the Southeast Division?
Yeah, I mean, they should be number 1 in the Southeast Division, and they should be a top 4 seed in the East. That's where I have them. Um, the Knicks are still gonna be good. Um, I think that roster is just too talented not to be aggressive there. The Cavs, they're gonna be awesome again. They had the best regular season record last year, and, they didn't have an amazing postseason, but they're gonna be a really good regular season team for sure, and could be even better in the off season or in the postseason. So I mean, Bucks have Giannis, but the rest of their roster is kind of questionable. Um, there's yeah, I mean, 3 or 4. that's where the Magic should land for sure, and that's where I'm holding them to.
So another thing that happened for the Magic was a rebrand. And I think oftentimes, and I don't know why this is the case, and I want to get your opinion on this also. And I think the Magic avoided this is that, and maybe this is something not to be super concerned about, but I'll just watch the NBA. I like just the presentation. So
Sure.
with jerseys, like the court, I think that affects in terms of my view and experience. So when we see all these all city jerseys or the alternate courts, usually they don't do that much for me. And it's crazy because online you see all these crazy designs and it's spectacular, but yet the NBA designs leave something to be desired except for the Magic. And I think the redesign has been pretty spectacular. So, what is your opinion of this redesign? Can you kind of explain the origin? And do you think this might be a model for other teams within the league? Because I do think it's modernized, but yet honoring their past. I think they hit a home run when they pulled this off earlier in the summer.
For Magic fans, right? I grew up in Orlando. I don't live there anymore, but I grew up in Orlando, still very, very connected to that community out there. My family lives out there. A lot of my closest friends are out there. And obviously I'm very tied into the Orlando Magic fan base and the media base over there. And every year for the last probably 8 years, 9 years plus, everyone has been asking for a rebrand. And they've been wanting to have it go back to the original type of pinstripe scheme that we had in the early 90s with the Shaq and Penny era. That is just like hands down the fan favorite, kind of like your Bulls with the 90s pinstripes, in the Jordan era. That's just
Yep.
what everyone loves, right? Um, and I think they killed it. I mean, when they did these, throwback, anniversary edition jerseys, a handful of years ago, they did the blue pinstripes. And I mean, those just become everyone's favorite so fast. And we've known this rebrand was coming and we were all a little nervous on it because, like, not a lot of us have loved the city edition jerseys that have kind of like tied in the pinstripes, and we know the ownership and the people that really run the franchise are a little bit more conservative, but for the most part we think they hit the nail on the head. There's no one that's really complaining and saying, oh, I wish they did, they wish they didn't change this and stuck with the old one. Everyone is loving this new look and feel. It really does bring homage to the original 90s Magic, which just was everyone's, favorite era, that, with Shaq and Penny, that kind of put Orlando on the map. And those jerseys were just so clean. And then I also just think, like, in general, like kind of where the world is at, the 90s like style is having a moment again. And it just kind of fits in with all of that. As far as like the logos and stuff, there's like, for the most part, I think it's all really good. I think it's all made a step forward. I have a couple little things I could be nitpicky about. I actually work in marketing and branding as my full time job. So there's always going to be a little bit of a critical eye there. But I think in general, like, they nailed it, and there's not much to complain about, and most people won't even think about the things that I'm looking at. We see a trend with the global icons going to this more circular
Yeah.
logo. I don't particularly love that look all the time. It kind of feels a little stale, but I think because like the league is pushing for these, um I think there's like what, 20 something teams, or almost half the league has a global icon that's in a circular formation now. So it's just a trend that everyone is starting to do. I think there's pressure from the league to kind of have a logo that fits that type of, shape. Um, it's pretty fine. I think it's great. I probably would have done something a little bit different with the stars on how they trail, still integrating them, but I think I would have done a little bit of rebalancing there. But in general, like, I'm getting into the weeds there. General, they hit the nail on the head. I think everyone loves this rebrand. It looks really fresh on a lot of the new signage around the arena, on the jerseys. It's looking really, really good. And I'm hoping that they will just rock with this theme for a very long time. And they probably will. They'll probably rock it for at least 10 years or so.
Yeah, it looks really good, and I think it goes to their practice facility. I believe I was watching it before you jumped on, just in terms of, you know, building a new practice facility. It's
Yeah.
state of the art equipment. Looks spectacular. Usually with practice facilities, you usually hear that nowadays with the W
Yeah.
in terms of new, teams getting new practice facilities. You don't really hear that within the NBA. It's just more standard fare, but it's spectacular what Orlando did with that. Can you talk about how that might play into free agents? Does that matter on kind of the NBA side? I know it matters a lot for the W, but I'm
Totally.
just wondering for the NBA, having this practice facility, how does that play into getting free agents, especially to where, the national narrative is that, the big stars go to the bigger cities. But with this practice facility, I'm sure it's a coup for the Magic in attracting free agents.
There is a video out there on YouTube, that I can't remember who did it, but they did a pretty deep tour, and it came out this summer of the practice facility. And if you're listening to this or watching this, just go search Orlando Magic practice facility tour. It's insane. Um, I think it's still rated number one in the NBA as far as training facilities, and there's been one or two more that have come out since then. They put $70 million into this training facility, and it's insane. I mean, dude, it's got an altitude chamber training room where you can go stay in a room at altitude, right? They have cold tubs the size of our living rooms. They have hot tubs the size of our living rooms. There's nap stations that people can go take a nap if they don't feel like driving home. They can go take a nap. There's uh the, the players' locker rooms, they have their own walk-in closets. It truly is a place where a player can go, feel totally relaxed and comfortable, and have every type of training type of system that they need. Oh, and it's connected to a hospital. So if you do have an injury, you can just go right across the street and have it examined or an x-ray or whatever needs to be done. There's doctors literally across the street that have all the machines that they'll go and get looked at. So I absolutely do think it's a place where um if there's two locations offering a player a similar type of contract and we have this training facility and theirs is subpar to what we're offering, you got Florida, that's a tax-free income state. You have, pretty great weather year round for a winter sport and an amazing state-of-the-art training facility. I mean, I don't think it's going to pull someone away from like an LA or like a Miami. But if
Sure.
we're talking these more mid-tier teams, absolutely, I think this is a draw for many.
I want to tackle some league wide issues and topics that have come up.
Let's go.
And what's on mind is your perspective on this new TV deal. Been asking a lot of just our insiders and journalists how they feel about the new television landscape for the NBA. And we heard Adam Silver's comments just about pretty, I think, tone deaf comments about just, the fans being able to have access to the product. Just kind of your thoughts in terms of this new frontier. Do you think it's overblown in terms of like, you know, it being perhaps a little bit harder to watch the games, or do you think this might be a new opportunity for fans, to be able to experience the NBA on NBC? I know there's a lot of nostalgia. I'll speak for myself, just in terms of the '90s and that coming back. Just kind of what's your feeling in terms of kind of a new landscape? No more NBA on TNT. What's kind of your feelings in terms of a television product? How it's
Totally.
going to be presented this season?
I think the NBA in some ways is just catching up to the problems we were already dealing with before with just like non-sports watching. Like if you want to watch one thing, you got to have this app. If you want to watch another show, you got to have this app. And all of us are already paying for two or three different streaming services anyways. This is just kind of fitting right into that type of system. I had a problem with nationally televised games because I never had cable. Uh I didn't have the national network, so I when an Orlando Magic game was playing on TNT or ESPN, I had a really hard time watching them. I could watch the ABC games, but the other ones, because I didn't pay for ESPN and I didn't have cable to watch TNT, I had to, see if it was on like HBO Max or or if it was on like YouTube TV or something like that. I had to like figure that kind of stuff out. So I was already dealing with this type of what platform is it on? Am I gonna have access to it? I already pay for League Pass, so it's more of like a nationally televised issue. Um, And yeah, it's annoying, but am I gonna be any less annoyed that I was already last year when I had kind of already still dealing with this issue? Sure. Yeah. No, I don't know if I'll be less annoyed. I'll still probably be just as annoyed. I mean, in some ways it's like, cool, I already have Amazon Prime. Like that's already an account I have in my household. Um, I already have Peacock, so like I already have most of the software. So for me individually, it's not gonna be too much of a difference, but in general, it does make it more complicated for people to watch basketball, and, you know, it was simpler when we all just had cable and could just but that's the same for everything, for every kind of television show, everything was simpler now with cable than it is with all these different streaming services, so ultimately, my wish would be like, could I just pay $500 for the season on League Pass and just have everything all at once, or some price that is just that covers everything national to local. The bigger issue for me isn't so much the different streaming services; it's still how much of a pain in the butt it is for local people to watch their own teams. Where it's like, cool, I got to pay for all these streaming services, plus, I'm a diehard basketball fan, so I'm going to pay for League Pass, but that still doesn't even cover my local team for either one of those things. I still then have to pay for like FanDuel Sports or Fox Sports, whatever the platform is that this thing, and that's another 30 or $20 a month on top of all that. So it's like it's still not simple for local people to watch their own teams. And to me, that's the bigger issue than the national stuff being on a couple different platforms that most people already have two or three of those anyways. So that's really where my gripe is because again, like we can all complain uh about the new stuff, but like ESP or ABC you can get or yeah, you can get on just by buying $10 rabbit ears at Target. Most people already have Amazon Prime. So it's most people I imagine are only having to add one more platform. I would think. Um, and yeah, that's annoying for sure. I think the platform Peacock is one I'm not even paying for. I think I'm getting it through a friend. So it's like if they stop paying for it, then I'll have to pay for it, and that's frustrating. But I still think the larger issue is more of like local people watching their own team. That to me is the bigger problem.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also people that don't live in if they like they lived in a local market where there's a team and they have to move away, like they might have access to all those games in a local market depending on the you go ahead.
It's easier for me to watch the Magic on the West Coast than it is for my friends to watch it in Orlando. I pay
Yeah,
$99 a year for League Pass and I get every game other than the national broadcast games, and again, we just addressed that, like there's ways to
sure.
watch those. But my friends, when I go back home, I have to pay $20 for a week or two for me to be there just to watch the app where the Magic games are on. And that's a fifth of the price that I pay for the entire year on League Pass. Like, I don't know. It just something's got to change there, Justin.
Yeah,
That's what doesn't make sense. It's more expensive and harder for my friends in Orlando to watch it that live locally than it is for me that lives on the West Coast right now.
I agree. Blackouts really make no sense. I never understood that.
No,
Like you're trying to prevent your fans from viewing your product. That's counterintuitive to
makes
me.
no sense.
Yeah. And to that point, I want to talk to you about, and I don't know if you've been following this, kind of the league expansion in terms of
Hmm,
Europe.
yeah.
And then also, it was broke about an hour ago, and these are strong rumors from ESPN reporters. They're reporting that LeBron James and Maverick Carter, they're exploring, planning to form a new international league.
Oh
To
yeah.
me, I think this is shocking. It says, "quote The group of investors want to create a league that would compete with the NBA. They don't want it to be a U.S. league. They want it to be a league with a European flavor." So, to me, I have so many questions just from both a LeBron and Maverick Carter perspective and from a Adam Silver perspective from trying to expand into Europe. I'm just very curious. Am I missing something in terms of there's a lot more opportunity within North America in terms of how many years we've talked about Seattle and how many years we've heard about Las Vegas, and yet they're pursuing these international endeavors, which I think there's a lot of opportunities to grow the game internationally. We've seen that with the Olympics on the male side certainly, but I just think in terms of um, both endeavors, I have serious questions in terms of, not only splitting your fan base into three if these come to fruition, but just how successful are they going to be? And is this the best interest of the game overall by just having, all this expansion happen all at once?
Yeah, good. I mean, it's an interesting conversation for sure. I might not have all the answers or thoughtful approach to it, but I'll start with one at a time, right? The NBA Europe League. I feel like that is just trying to kind of be like a second version of the G League, but over in Europe, where we have these players that are, kind of at the tail end of their career, or getting squeezed out with rookies that are like kind of these mid to low, second and third unit type players that probably still could play in the NBA, but don't have enough roster spots in the NBA. So they go look to go play over like Real Madrid and all these other different, teams overseas. And, hey, if we can build a league where these players can have a home, that keeps them in the system a little bit easier, keeps more money in the NBA's pocket. Maybe I mean, if that league would even make money, I probably wouldn't. But maybe it's an easier system for like, all right, so you didn't make it at the original and for October for training camp, but there's some injuries happen. You're playing for a team over in Europe. You have an opportunity to come back to the States midseason and play for them instead of being in contract with another league where they might not be able to get out of that. That's kind of my thinking there. But then I'm like, if you put all this money into the Europe League, what does that mean for the G League, right? That is local. Would that affect, would players that are kind of choosing to be in the local G League affiliates, would that affect them going over to Europe? And would that talent pool be less strong? Um, I don't know. I think there's just still too many unknowns with that league and what the purpose is. Like, is it just going to turn into what NBA Africa is, where there's some stuff there, and you get one player every couple of years from that league to come over and maybe make a roster, but gets invited to training camp. It'll be interesting. I think it's one of those projects that's like, we probably won't see the direct impact until it's been around for 10 years. And maybe at that point it would, but yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like NBA players that are good enough to make the NBA would choose NBA Europe over NBA United States. I
Yeah.
think it's more for those like fringe NBA players or the guys that might be up and coming but not good enough yet or don't want to go to college and they want to go there. I think it's just a way to kind of like keep people in their systems a bit more. Um, the LeBron James thing with his like super league, it kind of reminds me of like live golf in the PGA tour. Um, but would they have enough money to really pull strong enough talent? Or is this just gonna be like another thing where it's like, fringe NBA players are gonna pick that because they can go play 30 minutes a night instead of, maybe making the roster and sitting in the 15th spot or on a two-way spot. Like they'd have to have a ton of money to be able to offer some of these players that are getting paid, the top players right now are getting paid 50, $60 million a year. Are they going to have that type of investments to be able to do it? I mean, these franchises are worth 5, $6 billion. Do they have that kind of money to be able to attract the people? Like, if- that seems like a big ask. And I just don't know if that's going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know enough to like really draw too many conclusions, but I have a hard time, um, seeing the I just have a hard time seeing them being successful with pulling the big stars. And that's the same thing, same thoughts I have on expansion. Like we have enough role players to fill two more teams. Do we have enough top guys that can be true franchise cornerstones, a 1A, 1B type players to fill two more teams? And that's where I'm like, I don't even know if we have enough for two more teams, right?
Wow.
We got plenty of these, second unit type guys, third unit type of guys to go play, but is there an is there another Paulo and enough Paulo type players and Giannis's and even I mean, look, the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, Utah Jazz can't even find their cornerstone players, and they've been struggling for years. The Bulls, I mean, part of that is ownership and management, but like again, like ho we already have these teams struggling. We're gonna add 2 more to that. They're not gonna be on the competitive side. They're gonna be on the likely the struggling side for a very long time. So I just, I'm not against expansion, but I still think there's some things to figure out with it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential just due to the fan bases, even if the team struggles,
Yeah, for sure. They'll make
especially
money.
with Seattle and Vegas.
Yeah.
I think with the LeBron thing, I'm thinking Saudi Arabia. That's the only thing I can think
Yeah.
of. Comes to mind in terms of if you follow the combat sports space or you mentioned live golf. I think that's the only shot that they
Totally.
got to make this happen. So it's shocking that he's pivoting. I mean, this is reported by Brian Windhorst of ESPN. So this is not some fringe report.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I,
I wonder if it's a leverage move so he can just get into ownership when they do expand. Because we know
yeah,
LeBron will also do these like mixed messages things to
sure.
try and just get what he wants. And we know he wants to be an NBA team owner. So I wonder if this is just like a leverage thing. But I mean, you saw this news before we got. I haven't seen or read anything about it yet. So I have some research to do on my own after we get off and kind of see what's going on. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, where's the money? It's got to be from like somewhere in the Middle East.
Final question for you, Steven. For those that are watching the Orlando Magic on League Pass, it's their first time seeing the Magic, or they come across it, they might be bored and might see the Magic on a random night. What they should be looking for when reviewing this team, obviously Paolo Banchero, but what are some other things that they should be watching out for, and why they should be tuning into the Magic just in terms of the season, as maybe add them on to one of their favorite League Pass teams?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Paolo Banchero, I'm just gonna start with him. Like, he's a monster. Like, the way he operates, even while he's getting double and triple teamed, is just insane. He is a person that can get to the free throw line at will, and he's not really foul hunting. He's just physical, so he gets fouled a lot. And it's just, he's just a really fun basketball player. He's a really strong mid-range shooter. He can finish at the rim really well. And if his efficiency improves, like he can be a three-level scorer with his three-point shooting in the playoffs. Both years he shot over 40%. Last year I think he shot 32% from three during the regular season. We're hoping that gets up to like 35, 36% this year for the regular season. But he's just like we have these two 6'10 forwards in Paulo and Franz that can dribble, they can play make, they can drive to the rim. Franz, his footwork is nasty going to the rim. He's got some insane footwork. He can finish 20 different ways around the basket. And they both can play make and read out of double teams really well. And that's just fun to watch when you have two dudes at like 6'10 that can do that. Um, if you like watching defense, watch the Orlando Magic. They're a really, really high level defensive team. Wendell Carter Jr. is not the craziest center in the world, but he's someone that can handle a switch 1 through 5. Um, and truly was phenomenal to watch last year during the playoffs series with the Celtics, and we're hoping that can continue to translate this year. Jalen Suggs, he is just a dog. He is everywhere. He will fight through every screen, go for every loose ball. He is just, I mean, he's an all defensive type of player. And then when you add shooting, like, I mean, Desmond Bain is what, a top 2, 3 3-point shooter in the league. Like when you add someone like that, that's going to create so much more operating space for players like Paulo and Franz to really do their thing in. And that's fun. And then, like we were mentioning earlier, you got these younger players that potentially could be taking leaps. And it's just a team that has good chemistry. Like these players want to play for each other. They will often do the unselfish thing when they can, and you know give the ball to another teammate to score when that makes more sense. And so and they cheer for each other. They love each other. That this team is young and youthful, and you feel that energy on the court. And you have a young coach that is truly believing in his team. And up to this point, the chemistry between players and coaches it's really strong. So you're just going to see a fun group of guys that are young that play hard on both ends of the ball, even if they're, in years past are often sucked. We're hoping that is not the case this year. that should win a good amount of games this year. And they're going to be recognized for it because they got 14 nationally televised games. Paulo will probably make All Star again this year. Franz very well should as well. Um, who knows how the guards play out in the Eastern Conference this year and how Desmond Bane might fit into that. I'm not going to say the Magic are going to have 3 All-Stars, but they probably should have 2 if things play out the way we think they will. And let's just hope for a healthy season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Steven, thank you very much for spending the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your podcast, your work, and any upcoming projects you're working on?
Yeah, Orlando Magic HQ for is where all of the content that I work on goes. You can search that on YouTube or your favorite podcast feed. And my show, The Close Up, is one of the weekly shows that we throw out there. There's the Orlando Magic HQ flagship show with my partners, and then there's my show, The Close Up. My show's a little bit more interview based. So every week, most weeks, you'll find me interviewing someone when we're talking about the Orlando Magic, whether it's another media member, sometimes it's someone from the franchise, or someone connected to the team in some way or another. So that's really fun. And if you want to follow my personal account, you can find me at Steven Magic HQ. That's Steven with the PH Magic HQ on X, Twitter. You won't find me on Instagram, but that's where you'll find all my work. That's where I'll interact with all of you. And Orlando Magic HQ. Let's go.
Awesome. Steven, thank you very much. Good luck for the Magic and yourself covering the team for the upcoming season. Appreciate it.
Justin, this was a pleasure. I really appreciate having me. Let's do this again soon.